So you have our final installment of 2 Kings today. Yes, sir, I do. Hot dog, are you gonna wrap it up with a bang? Not even remotely, sir. Oh. Yeah, we're just gonna go through a few more of the titular kings and their coups and corruption until the whole thing just sorta creaks to a demoralizing stop. Interesting writing strategy. No, it's not going to be interesting at all, sir, no. I mean your approach. My approach, sir? Never mind, let's just get this over with. Agreed, sir. So we're picking right back up with Hezekiah, remember him? Yes, he was a real favorite of God's and was successful in everything he did. Ish. That's him, but now he's on his deathbed. Oh no, Hezekiah. I know, right? There was no king like him before or since in Judah. Well, we all get older and must pass on at some point, so I'm guessing that Hezekiah is ill because he's near the end of life. Nope, he's not that old. Oh, did he get injured in battle? You know, defending the honor of our Lord? Nothing like that, no. Well then, I give up. Tell me what grave condition has afflicted this favored regent of God's. A boil. A boil. Yep, a big old zit. That's both super gross and hilarious. Well, Hezekiah doesn't think it's funny because the prophet Isaiah gives him the bad news straight from God. He's gonna die because of it. From a boil. Yes, maybe you might want to try changing that to something that sounds a little more, I don't know, serious. Like what? God, most anything else would be better. How about having him die of cardiovascular disease? Cardiovascular? Okay, how about having him die from a subdural hematoma? A subdural hema? Never mind, fine, a boil it is. Great, wow, dying of a boil of all things. This filthy armpit of the world is just a rancid cesspool, huh? As promised lands go, it's a shithole for sure. So, since God said he's going to die, I assume it's going to be impossible for Hezekiah to pray his way out of this. Actually, it's going to be super easy, barely an inconvenience. Oh, really? Yep. Hezekiah whines to God that he always followed the Lord's will and that he was a good king, and even starts crying like a little bitch. What a wonderful role model for us all. He sure is, because his whining and tears get God to change his mind. Our omniscient and omnipotent Lord reverses himself because Hezekiah boo-hooed. Yes. Wow. So Hezekiah is awarded with an additional 15 years to live by God. And some guys from Babylon show up with get well cards and gifts because they'd heard how sick he was. Aw, that's nice. And Hezekiah shows these envoys from Babylon all the treasures in his palace and in his kingdom. There was nothing of his treasures that he did not show them. Why would he do that? I don't know. That works for me. So then the prophet Isaiah tells Hezekiah that the Lord has decreed that all his treasures will soon be carried off to Babylon, and even some of his male descendants will have their balls cut off and serve the king of Babylon. Wait, what? But Hezekiah is totally okay with all of this because there's going to be peace in his lifetime. What the hell? So moving on. Wait a second. Shit. You said there's never been a better king for Judah than Hezekiah. Yes. He did everything right as far as God was concerned. Yes. He removed the high places, he smashed the sacred stones, and he cut down the Asherah poles. So, God even saved Hezekiah's kingdom by murdering 185,000 Assyrian soldiers that were threatening it. What's your point? Why is God telling Hezekiah that his kingdom is going to be stripped of his wealth and his descendants are doomed to become eunuchs? Not to mention you've undercut your own narrative about how awesome Hezekiah is by making him look like a total jerk for clearly not caring about his kingdom's future. Look, sir, I'm going to need you to get all the way off my back about the logical inconsistencies of my rhetoric or we're never going to get through this. Fine, let me get off that thing. Great. So whatever that was about, Hezekiah does eventually die and his son Manasseh takes power and he's just about the worst king ever. Oh, really? Hell yes, he rebuilds the pagan temples, worships Baal, and even sacrifices his own son in the fire. Wow, he's a real piece of work. Oh, you don't even know. He also practices divination, consults mediums, and builds altars to all these starry hosts. Damn! And he spills so much innocent blood that it fills Jerusalem from end to end. I'm surprised the list of his indiscretions has gotten this long. Oh yeah, he goes way out of his way to spit in God's face at every opportunity. You think by his 4th or 5th egregious episode of utter blasphemy that God would just squash him like a bug? Yes, you would think that, wouldn't you? Well, yeah, how long does he keep this up? Obviously, God isn't going to put up with that kind of sacrilege for very long. Only 55 years. What? Yep, Manasseh absolutely craps on God for over half a century, and God doesn't give him so much as an earache. Seriously, there's even a scene in here where Manasseh literally goes into that temple that Solomon built, and he drops a turd, picks it up, and writes Yahweh's name on the altar with it, and Yahweh does nothing.
Too much.
What do you mean?
Too much. You've crossed a line.
Oh, maybe so.
Strike that last bit, please.
Fine.
Was that one of Larry's?
That was one of Larry's.
What is it with that guy and poo?
His home life was quite unusual.
I don't want to know. So what is your narrative goal here?
We're just setting up God's chosen people for a truly comprehensive smiting.
By undermining any possibility that God could be portrayed as morally consistent and rational?
It kind of goes hand in hand.
Fine, whatever. So God brings down a holy ass-kicking sometime during Manasseh's reign.
Nah, he just issues some hilarious threats.
What do you mean?
He blusters that he'll bring such disaster on Jerusalem and Judah that the ears of everyone who hears of it will tingle.
Tingle.
And he will wipe out Jerusalem as one wipes out a dish, wiping it and turning it upside down.
Upside down?
Upside down, sir, yes.
Harsh.
And then there's the usual diatribe that he's going to forsake them and give them into the hands of their enemies, and they'll be looted and plundered, and yada yada yada. He's been angry with them since the day their ancestors came up out of Egypt.
But no actual smiting happens while Manasseh is on the throne.
Correct.
Well, okay then.
So, after 55 idolatrous, blasphemous years, Manasseh finally dies a peaceful death, and then his equally terrible son, Ammon, takes the throne.
Doing the usual evil in the eyes of the Lord crap?
Doing the usual evil in the eyes of the Lord crap, sir, yes.
Does God bring the hammer down on him?
Nah, he waits until Ammon's son, Josiah, becomes king.
And does Josiah do the evil in the eyes of the Lord crap too?
No, actually, he's pretty awesome.
Really?
Oh, yes. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and followed completely the ways of his father David, not turning aside to the right or to the left.
Well, great. So does God call off the holy ass-kicking?
Gosh, you know, he would have just loved to, but then we decided to put just one more obstacle in Josiah's way.
And what was that?
Get this. There's this mystery book of laws that no one knows about.
Okay.
And some priest just randomly finds it one day hidden away in a temple.
All right.
And apparently it's just full of commandments and decrees that God wanted followed.
Aye.
But no one's been doing any of it because the people had no idea the book even existed.
What sort of commandments and decrees?
I don't know.
That works.
But when Josiah finds out what they are, he's like, man, we're fucked.
This kind of reminds me of that scene in that Mel Brooks movie.
The Lord Jehovah has given unto you these 15, wait, 10 commandments.
You know, whoops.
Whoopsie.
So does their genuine ignorance result in any leniency from God?
Oh, don't be ridiculous.
I just thought I'd ask.
Now, Josiah does try his very best to get the people back on track with the edicts in the newly rediscovered book.
Going to try and head off God's homicidal fury, is he?
Yep, by clearing out all the pagan crap that he had cluelessly allowed to remain from the preceding kings.
Good for him. Does it work?
Nah, but God is impressed by his effort, and he tells Josiah, your eyes will not see all the disaster I'm going to bring on this place.
Oh, Josiah must be tickled pink.
Who knows? He dies sometime later in battle, and that's the end of him.
So is it finally time to bring the hammer down?
It's finally time to bring the hammer down.
Oh, bringing the hammer down is tight.
Among other things. We use the last 2 chapters to show God absolutely tearing Judah a new asshole.
Nice.
It's something else. God, in all his long-suffering and abundant goodness, sends Babylonian, Aramaean, Moabite, and Ammonite raiders to strip out every last bit of wealth that's left in Judah.
This has happened so many times now, it's hard to believe that there's anything left to loot.
And yet, there it is in black and white. And then all the officials and soldiers, as well as all the skilled workers and artisans, are carried off. Only the poorest people are left behind.
Jeez.
At some point, there's another king again, and he repeats the usual evil in the eyes of the Lord crap.
Does he do it for 55 years and get a peaceful death like Manasseh?
Nah, he rebels against Babylon, and they kill his sons in front of him and then put his eyes out.
Jesus!
And finally, there's this Babylonian guy who goes through this thoroughly pacified kingdom, and he burns down all the important buildings.
Dad gum!
And that about does it. What do you think?
We're finally done with the Book of Kings.
Yes.
Thank God.
He is so good.
Always. These books of Samuel and Kings were quite the chore. I hope you've got something better in mind for our next meeting.
I could do that, or, and hear me out on this, we could repeat all that crap again.
What?